Hi students, welcome to PhD Jobs and Admission. This is Gauri. So in this video, I am going to teach you about research methodology section of BRAOU PhD entrance test, and that's why I am going to teach you about experimental research by using MCQs in this video, and that's why on this topic you will be asked 3 to 4 questions each year. So after viewing this video, all of your doubts will get clear, but still if you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment box. So before starting this session, I want to tell you that Global Online team provides you complete course on research methodology. As in BRAOU PhD entrance test, you will be asked 50% MCQs on research methodology. So if you want to qualify PhD entrance test, then you need to score more marks in research methodology. So with the help of this course, you can score more marks in research methodology and qualify PhD entrance test. So students, in this course we are providing you full syllabus video lectures under which theory and MCQ lectures both are available. You will get full syllabus notes and mock tests. You will get more than 1500 MCQs revision PDF, and all of these study materials are available in both the languages, Hindi and English. So basically students, we have 10 mock tests like this, and each mock test contains 40 MCQs, and that's why overall you can solve 400 MCQs in mock test only. And by the use of this revision PDF, you can revise all the topics in a single PDF, and you will be getting 80% MCQs from this revision PDF only out of 100% MCQs in research methodology section of BRAOU PhD entrance test. And over here, the topics that I have mentioned, like research aptitude, communication, data interpretation, information and communication technology, all of these topics are covered, okay, in this complete course, and these topics are there in the syllabus of your research methodology section of PhD entrance test. Okay, so students, if you want to buy this course, then you can either download the Global Online app from the Play Store. For that I have given the link in the description box of this video, or else you can contact me through these WhatsApp numbers. Okay, and the course fees are really very less, which are only 699 rupees, and in such a low course fees, we are providing you step by step guidance at your each and every step of PhD admission at BRAOU, and as well Global Online team provides you 100% passing guarantee, that you can guaranteed qualify the PhD entrance test. Okay, first question is the research method that provides the strongest evidence for causality is. So among these options, which is the research method which provides us the strongest evidence for causality? Causality means the cause and effect relationship between the variables. Okay, so whether it is ethnography, whether it is experimental, whether it is causal, comparative or correlational. So let us step by step think about it. What are the meanings of each and every research method? So within the ethnography research method, basically this is the qualitative type of research method, because in this research method a researcher wants to study the culture of a particular society or community. Okay, in the experimental research method, basically this is the quantitative research method, and within the experimental research method, a researcher manipulates the independent variable and sees what are the effects of it on the dependent variable. So basically here within the experimental method, we are going to test the cause and effect relationship between the variables, and basically we get the strongest evidence in this kind of research, because we test the hypothesis by using the different statistical techniques, and finally we get the results based upon our observations and proper evidence. And that's why experimental method gives us the strongest evidence for causality, that is the cause and effect relationship between the variables. Okay, what is causal comparative research method? So this is the research method in which as well we are going to study the cause and effect relationship between the variables, but here we are going to study the facts which are already happened in the past. Okay, and that's why we don't have proper control over the variables like we have the control over the variables in experimental research. So this is the most important thing in the causal comparative research method. And as well, if there is a cause and effect relationship between the variables, then we will get the right results, but if it is not there, then we don't get the proper results, and that's why here we don't have the strongest evidence for causality.
okay, like we have in the experimental research method. Okay, within the correlational research method, we are going to assess, or we are going to identify the correlation between the variables. Basically there is correlation between the variables which is already exist over there. We are going to just identify the correlation between them. Correlation is nothing but whenever we are going to decrease or increase the amount of one variable, then because of that there will be decrease or increase in the amount of the another variables. That we call it as correlation. Okay, because the values of those variables are correlating with each other. Okay, and that's why the correct answer for this question is second, that is experimental research method. And that's why students, in experimental study, researcher manipulates independent variable and controls for all other variables that could influence outcome, and it allows for establishment of cause and effect relationship between independent and dependent variables. So because of all these characteristic features of the experimental research method, it provides us the strongest evidence for causality. Next is specific feature which differentiates all experimental research from all other method of research is. So what is the difference between experimental research and all other research methods? Basically, what is the special feature which is there in the experimental research, and because of that we are going to differentiate the experimental research method from the other research methods. So whether it is direct observation of events, or control of variables, or manipulation of independent variable, or use of random sample. So I have already told you in the question 1 that what is the experimental research, but again I am going to discuss the some salient features of it. So basically in the experimental research method, we will be having the controlled environment. It means that we do our experiments in a proper controlled environment in a laboratory, and these environments are really essential, because in these environments only we can properly do our measurements, our testing. Okay, now second is random sample. Okay, so here we use two different types of groups, control group and treatment group, and whenever we want to assign the participants in these two groups, we are going to assign them randomly. There is no any bias over here. Okay, now next is control of variables. So we are going to be having a proper control, or you can say complete control on the variables in the study. So basically we control all the other variables in the experimental research apart from the variable which is under study. Okay, and fourth one is manipulation of independent variable. Manipulation of independent variable. Okay, so the salient feature of experimental research is that we are going to manipulate the independent variable, that is the cause variable, and we are going to search for or measure for the effect of this amount of independent variable on the dependent variable, that is the effect variable. So this is the basic, or you can say unique feature of experimental research, and because of this feature we are going to differentiate experimental research from other methods of research. Okay, and another salient feature is that direct observation. So you can do direct observations in this research method as well, but this is not the unique feature, and that's why the correct answer for this question is 3, that is manipulation of independent variable, because this is the unique feature of this experimental research method, and other features are there in the experimental research method, but these features are as well there in other research methods also. Okay, the main difference between laboratory experiment and field experiment is in. So what is the main difference between laboratory experiment and field experiment? So the main difference between laboratory experiment and field experiment is that laboratory experiment is going to be held in a proper controlled environment, in the lab environment. Okay, and field experiment it is going to be done in the natural environment, and that's why in the laboratory experiment we can control all of the extraneous variables whichever there are, because all of the situations are under our control. We are going to make the artificial environment which is called as the laboratory or controlled environment. Okay, within the field experiment, as it is whole natural, and that's why we don't have proper control on the extraneous variables. So basically the extraneous variables are the variables on which researcher don't want to study anything, but because of these extraneous variables they having to be and having a false effect on the results of our research study. Okay, and that's why we should have to remove such kind of extraneous variables or control such extraneous variables, and that's why we go for the experimental research method, because we can do such kind of research methods in the laboratory only, in the controlled environment, and so that we can control the extraneous variables on a greater degree than the field experiment. Okay, so let us see different options. Precision in measurement of variables, it means that how precise the measurement of variables are there. Then degree of control of extraneous variables, that which I have told you for explanation part of this question. Use of data analysis techniques, then application of research instruments. So the correct answer for this is second, that I have told you. The amount of degree of control of extraneous variables is the main difference between laboratory experiment and field experiment, because precision in measurement of variables can be done in both the experimental methods, and the precision won't change whether it is laboratory experiment or a field experiment. As well, you can do lots of data analysis techniques in both the research methods, they won't change, and also you can apply different research instruments, they also won't change. But the correct answer for this is second, because degree of control of extraneous variables are going to be changed in the laboratory experiment and in the field experiment. An investigator uses two matched groups to compare effectiveness of two methods of teaching science, and this study would come in the ambit of. So investigator wants to see what is the effectiveness of two methods of teaching science, and for that he has made two matched groups. So basically I have two groups over here, group 1 and group 2, and I'm going to compare these groups because I want to study the effectiveness of two methods of teaching science. So for doing such kind of study, what a kind of study I'm going to follow. So whether it is experimental study, whether it is causal comparative study, descriptive survey study, phenomenological study, as here there are two groups, okay, and these two groups are matched groups, okay, and as well we are going to compare these groups. Because of that we are going to assess the effectiveness of two methods of teaching science. Okay, so for such studies we are going to be having the quantitative research method mostly, because if we want to compare the two groups, then obviously here we are going to make the null hypothesis and research hypothesis, and we are going to test here the null hypothesis, whether we are going to accept the null hypothesis or reject it, and that's why here we are going to use the different statistical techniques to test the null hypothesis, and that's why the method is quantitative. But from these options, descriptive survey study is the qualitative, you can say it is qualitative and quantitative, both mixed research method, but phenomenological study is the qualitative, because within the phenomenological study we are going to study the lived experiences of the people, and for that we are going to study their qualitative characteristics. Okay, how a particular person have experienced the particular event or the particular situation. So we are going to study all these kind of stuffs by using the phenomenological study, which is a qualitative research study. That's why this option is getting eliminated. Now within the descriptive survey study, we are going to make a questionnaire, and we are going to share such kinds of questionnaires to our respondents, and respondents give us the answers for our open-ended questions, because this is descriptive, and that's why we are going to get the answers in the descriptive format. So here as well, we are not going to compare any kind of groups, right? Though it is quantitative and as well as qualitative research method, so this also getting eliminated. Within the causal comparative study, I have told you that in the causal comparative study, the situation or the fact has been already occurred, and in this kind of study, we don't have the control on the variables like we have in the experimental study. But if I am going to do a certain kind of research, and in that if I am going to compare the two groups, then obviously I should have the control upon the variables. Okay, and that's why this is also get eliminated. So the correct answer for this is experimental study, because here I want to see the effectiveness of two methods of teaching science, and for that I am going to use the two matched groups. So for a particular each and every group, I am going to assign different participants, and I am going to treat them based upon the two methods of teaching science, and then after that I can see the effectiveness. Okay, and that's why I should have the control over the variables, which I can do it from using the experimental study. Next is, this is an example for true experimental design. So from these study designs, which is the example for true experimental design. So one shot case study, post test only single group design, Solomon 4 group design, or static group design. So first of all, we will see what is the group design. Okay, so in group designs, analysis of data and conclusion draw from study occur at level of group, not individual participants. So here whatever we get the conclusions, okay, so these conclusions are made from the groups, okay, not from the individual persons. Okay, this is called as the group design. Now let us see each and every study over here. What is one shot case study? Okay, so here single group of test units is exposed to experimental treatment, and single measurement is taken afterward. Only measures post test results and does not use control group. Okay, now next is post test only single group design. What is this? So this is basically the quasi experimental research design. It means that it is not fully the experimental research design, and here dependent variable is measured for one group of participants following treatment. What is Solomon 4 group design? So basically Solomon 4 group design attempts to take into account influence of pre-testing on subsequent post-test results. And the last one is static group design. So here two groups are used, experimental and control, and test units are not assigned randomly between both groups. So what is exactly true experimental research design? So I have told you earlier in this video only that here randomly participants are assigned, as well there is control over the variables. Okay, so these are the two main things, and as well we are going to manipulate the independent variable over here, manipulation of the independent variable. So these are the most important features of true experimental research design. But within the one shot case study, here there is only single group of test unit, and the most important thing in true experimental research design is that we are going to use the two groups, and among that two groups, control group is there and treatment group is there. But in the one shot case study, we are going to use only one group, single group, and that's why this is eliminated. This is not a true experimental research design. Even in post test only single group design, there is only one group, and as well this is the quasi experimental research design. It is not a true experimental research design, so this is as well get eliminated. And the Solomon 4 group design, so over here we are going to assess our treatment groups on two bases. First of all, the pre-treatment as well and the post-treatment as well. So we are going to see over here what are the effects of pre-treatment conditions on the post-treatment conditions, and that's why here we are going to use the 4 group designs, and as well there is random assignment of the participants. and as well there is control over the variables. So overall this is the true experimental research design. That's why the correct answer for this is 3. And in the static group design, though we have two groups, one is experimental and one is control group, but still here there is no random assignment of the participants, and that's why this is not a true experimental research design. That's why the correct answer to this is Solomon 4 group design. In which method of research the independent variable is manipulated to observe and measure its effect on dependent variable? This is the easiest question, and obviously the correct answer for this is experimental method, because this is the only research method, and the salient and unique feature of experimental method is that we are going to manipulate the independent variable and we are going to observe and measure its effect on the dependent variable. And ex post facto research method is nothing but the research method in which we are going to study the causes of the facts which are already occurred in the past, or which are already occurred in the recent past. Okay. Case study research method is a research method in which we are going to study in-depth information about a single individual person, or we are going to study in-depth information of a particular group, okay, for a longer period of time. Historical research method is the research method in which we are going to study the past events and we are going to see their effects on our present and our future. And that's why the correct answer for this is second. The sequence of stages in experimental research. Now whatever the research type is over there, in the every research type there are different kinds of stages, and those stages have the common characteristics, and those stages are going to be changed according to the research types. So here are some sequence have been given from A to E, and we are going to select the correct sequence of stages in the experimental research design. So whether it is selection of the setting first, or operationalization of variables, administration of the experiment, selection of the experimental design, then analysis and interpretation of results. So basically your first stage should be selection of the setting. Okay, because you should have the proper setting, and you should have to assign the proper setting in which environmental condition or in which controlled environment you are going to do your experimental research. So first of all, select the setting. Then second is that selection of the experimental design. So basically the experimental design is nothing but the outline, through which outline you are going to do your whole research process. This is nothing but the experimental design. And the third stage would be operationalization of variables. So operationalization of variables is nothing but you are going to having the control on the variables, and here you are going to having the control on independent variable. You are going to have the manipulation of independent variable, and you are going to study the dependent variable. So this is nothing but operationalization of variables. And the fourth one is administration of the experiment, and this is nothing but you are going to do the whole experiment over here. And the fifth one is that analysis and interpretation of results. This should be your last stage. You are going to analyze the data whatever you have got, and after that you are going to interpret that data and finally conclude your research. And that's why the correct answer for this is third, that is A, D, B, C, E, because here A is your first stage, then D is your second, then B is your third, C is fourth, and E is fifth. Which is the process not needed in experimental research? So among these processes, which is the process which is not needed in experimental research? Manipulation and replication, then controlling, observation, absence of treatment group. Obviously the correct answer should be 4, because we should be having the treatment group in the experimental research, because without treatment group, on which group you are going to treat? Okay, and that's why treatment group is the essential part of the experimental research. And all of these processes, manipulation and replication, is also important, because here you are going to manipulate the independent variable. Replication means you are going to see your results of the experimental research through different conditions. So you are going to do your research in different conditions. That is nothing but the replication. Controlling means that you are going to be having a controlling on all the aspects of the variables, apart from the variable which is under study. Then observation means you are going to observe the variables, you are going to observe the measurements, everything. So all of these processes are important in the experimental research, and that's why the correct answer is 4. Next is the research method which focuses on establishing causal relationships with controls among variables, independent, moderator and dependent, is called. So among these research methods, which is the research method which focuses upon establishing the causal relationships between the variables, and as well here we are going to be having controls among the variables like independent variable, moderator variable or dependent variable. Okay, so ex post facto method, survey method, case study method, experimental method. Now until now all of you have been understood that whenever I want to focus upon establishing causal relationships, and as well along with that if I want to control over the variables, okay, then obviously I will follow the experimental method, because this is the only method in which I will be having the control over the variables completely. Okay, and there is no control over the variable which is under study, but for other variables I'll be having the control. And as well my focus is that I want to establish the causal relationships between the variables. So these two things make me that I'm going to do the experimental research method. And I have told you earlier that what is ex post facto method, what is survey method, and what is case study method. So here within the ex post facto method I won't be having the control over the variables, right? That's why it gets eliminated. Within the survey method, though I will be having the variables, but still my focus is not on the establishing causal relationships, because here I am getting the opinions from my respondents. So this is the most important for me in such kind of methods. And within the case study method as well, I want the opinions from my individual person or from my groups. Okay, this is also not the correct answer. So first three options get eliminated, and that's why the correct answer is 4. Experimental researches are aimed to. So what is the aim of experimental research methods? Establish association between variables, is describe variables, study the application of theory or study trend analysis. It means that what is the trending in the market, and we are going to study those trend, okay, in the market. So we are going to analyze the data over here in the trend market. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that the main elements of experimental research are control, that I have told you earlier, control, then manipulation, then random selection, and random assignment. So all of these are the main elements of the experimental researches, and that's why the main aim of experimental research is to establish the association between variables. It means that I'm going to establish the causality between the variables. So this is the main aim of the experimental research method. Okay, that's why the correct answer over here is 1. So students, thank you for watching this session. I hope all of you understood what is the experimental research method. So though if you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment box.